So my name is James Abel. I grew up in Virginia with a grandmother who was a very big entertainer and lots of fabulous events in her backyard. And I think I was just sort of blown away by the production of it. And as a little kid watching the staff come in and set up, and she had a cook, and she would prepare this kind of food. And one day she actually took a watermelon and she cut the top off with a zigzag cut, and then she put little fruit scoop balls of watermelon and honeydew and cantaloupe in there, and I thought that was pretty much the greatest thing I'd ever seen at that point in my life. So then I grew up and I went to college, and I got a degree in fine art and art history, and then I went on to get a business degree and worked for an art gallery company here in the U.S., selling art for 3 of their galleries in the Washington, D.C. area. And then I became international sales director. And then the early 90s hit, and people didn't want to buy art anymore, they wanted to sell it. So I went from making a lot of money to no money. I said, this can't happen. So just at the time, a friend of mine was the new food and beverage operation at a hotel in Washington. And he came to me one day and said, do you want to run a catering office? And I thought, sure, why not? So we went in as a startup. I mean, I was there helping figure out menus for the chefs and what things would cost and what the waiters were going to wear. And it was really fun and interesting. And so the hotel opened, and it was a brand new property, and somebody came in, and I would show them the ballroom, we had one ballroom, and they'd book a wedding, and somebody else would come in and book a wedding, and then somebody came in one day and didn't book a wedding. Why would you not book it? They said, well, we went down the street because, they had relationships with photographers and florists and invitation people, and I said, all right, I'll show you. So I went out and met every florist in 3-mile radius, and every invitation company, and every other. So we then had a complete packet. I was not about to lose money. So from then on, we were being booked, and when you work in a hotel property, you have only hotel space to work. So we were booked about 1.5 years out, and I was just kind of bored. I wanted more. So I went to work for an offsite catering company, an events company in Washington. And I did it just as the Clintons were going into office. And one of my best friends was their lead photographer and got me sort of in, and I ended up doing 2 presidential dinners in my first 3 years working for that company, as well as doing tons of stuff on Capitol Hill for all these congressmen and Congress and all that. So at this point, I'm now 27, maybe. I'm doing all these giant events, which today would scare the hell out of me. Back then, I was like, oh, this is easy. So anyway, then I decided that I realized that I looked at the calendar, and I had a day off in 9 months. And I was like, I just can't do this. It's just too much. So I left events, saying I would never do it again. And I moved to Philadelphia, where I got recruited to run events in the University of Pennsylvania. And I did that. And while I was there one day, I was on the phone with a New York client who we were finishing up our call, and she said, can I say something? I said, sure, what? She's like, you should have your own business. I was like, sure, whatever, okay, then. So then I'm walking home, and I ran into an old client who stopped me and said, where are you today? What are you doing? You should really have your own business. This was 2 people in 2 hours. This was a Wednesday afternoon. I got home. By Thursday, I was like, did it, I wouldn't be like 40 and old, and somebody would still want me again if I was no good. And on Monday, I went and gave notice and started a business. And I moved to New York. And I just think, I originally moved here as a planner. And then one day, I hired a florist for a wedding. And I thought their work was terrible and cost a lot of money. And my father's parents happened to be florists. I said, you know what? It's in there. I can do this. And so I'm here for it. And that's how I started my company 16 years ago.
I would have said the rustic.
As everybody says, I went to a rustic wedding, and it's like, everyone has a rustic wedding. But I'm kind of glad that that's fading because it's. I don't know. I do think that people are now starting to take chances though with some of the things and things with the metallics things that I did a wedding recently, where the client really didn't have a huge budget. So I decided to spend the money in linens and not flowers. And we did all silver and gold and bronze variations of sequins all over the entire room, just went up. And you just walked in, it was just magical. But it wasn't, a lot of flowers, but it was a little thing. So the do for the bride is to relax and enjoy your day. It's the only day you're ever going to have like that. The don't is to try and manage your own day. I tell my clients, don't even wear locks until you get married. I don't want you looking saying, what am I doing now? What do I do now? Let me tell you what to do when you need to do. Just live the day. Okay, great. That the way I handle it just a little differently than a lot of planners. So when a client meets with me the first time, regardless of what their budget is, I have both the bride and the groom sort of do a survey that I have independently. It talks about the important parts of a wedding to them personally. And then we bring this together and we decide how to spend their money according to that. Meaning, if they're all about food and they can care less about flowers, I'm not going to have a high flower budget because it's giving the wrong party to the wrong client. Right. And you want to go 4% of your budget on your jewelry and 3% of your shoes. I'm like, throw it away. I don't even want to see it. That to me applies to the most generic of weddings that could ever happen. You were not generic. This wedding should represent you.
And you for James, for the one do or the don't, for the officiant, the person who's officiating, the rabbi, priest.
Well, I think the do is to listen to the clients when you're getting to know them and really tailor what the ceremony is going to be based on them. I think the don't would be sort of going on about yourself, which I've had before. I had an aunt of the bride become the officiant for a destination wedding. And just before she was about to pronounce them married, she decided to let everyone know that she recently lost her job. This was potentially her new career. And if anyone needed an officiant to let her know. I would say, like,
don't do that.
You're not overly religious, but we fear more spiritual. So, I think it's, and sometimes you're dealing with parents that, are angry they're not getting married in church. So it's sort of finding that balance with the client to have a ceremony that represents who they are.
So this next section is I'm going to talk about a study, and I'm going to ask the panelists to respond to that. And I'll give them some time to think about this. And I'll give you more details before I ask you to respond. But the study showed that there's an inverse relationship between the money you spend on a wedding and the success of a marriage. As the study said, the more money you spend, the greater the likelihood of divorce. Now let me give you the details. It's not quite as simple as that. And then I want you to respond whether your experience supports that, or contradicts that, or if that's partially true, why is that true? I have my own ideas, which I'll share at the end because I read the study. So the study was done at Emory University in Atlanta, and they looked at 3,000 brides, which is not a huge number, but a significant number to be significant. And the question was, the money they spent on the wedding versus the rate of divorce. And what they found was that using sort of the average of $5,000 to $10,000 on the wedding, which is the average for people, I realize you guys do weddings that are many, many zeros beyond that. They found that the people that spent 0 to 1K were 53% less likely to get divorced. People that spent 1 to 5K were 18% less likely to get divorced. People that spent $10,000 to $20,000 were 29% more likely to get divorced. And people above 20 were 46% more likely to get divorced. Now, the other element of the study, so it doesn't sound all bad, was there was a positive relationship between the number of guests equally and the success of the marriage. So the greater the number of guests, more likely the marriage will last. The greater amount you spend on that, the less likely. So one at a time, just tell me, is that your experience? Have you seen that? Do you think that? Do you think I'm just making this up, like alternate facts? So let's start with the end. She had this one. And then
She said that, most of my couples here are, it's rare if I have a client under 33. They go to 50, So I always say when you see the parent, the 40-year-old pushing a baby in New York, they're the parent. You see the 40-year-old pushing it in Georgia, they're the grandparent. And, it's people that live and exist in New York are here to have careers and make their mark. And they're getting married later, but they both have jobs, they both make major decisions. So, when it comes to getting married, I can think on one hand the number of weddings I've done where one of the parents paid for everything. Even if the parents have all the money in the world, a lot of times the couple's like, I need money. I don't really need to go to my parents and have them fork over, $200 grand on this. So I do think that when they're more invested like that, they tend to sort of work together more as a team. I think that definitely makes a big difference. I haven't found there's been some huge relationship. It's like they think they own you. And they will run you down. Like I'm at a time right now being very mad. The invitation. Steve knows all about it. And she's like, she doesn't really have a budget. She thinks it's going to cost around $250. And she's an only child. And her dad's like, I'll pay for the wedding. But she's not really confessed to him fully what it's costing. And so she's just trying to sneak in little invoices here and there to get him to pay for it. But, so on this rehearsal dinner, she's like, I want to take over the roof of the Nomad Hotel and go right there. Or I want to do this, I do this. I have done research on probably 40 venues for the rest of dinner. Suddenly, she has $5,000 for her roof. It's just exhausting. And they don't value your time at all. And they think that they are your only client. I'm like, I have 20 of you at any given point in time.